So welcome to Musetech, an ideal syllabus. I'm Greg Albers, the Digital Publications Manager at the Getty.
And I'm Kathryn, Cody, and I am the Training Manager of Getty Digital at the Getty.
And let's get going.
So we started out with this, I had this grand idea about what would it take for us to have a digitally literate staff. And so we've had kind of a groundswell for the last couple of years of doing a lot of training, peer-to-peer training, and I went to Greg and I said, you know, let's create a syllabus, because I had this long laundry list of all these things that we wanted to learn, and Greg said, well, why don't we ask our community what they wish their staff knew? So many of you completed this survey, we crowdsourced it, and the call for the input, this was very hard to come up with one single question to ask you all, so I appreciate that, that you went with this. And the question is, what key digital skills and literacy should form a common vocabulary among our staffs at all levels, including collection specialists, content producers and developers, and the all-important leadership, in order to drive digital transformation in our institutions? So that was the question.
And we got about over 50 responses from folks, and it was just an open field so they could type whatever they wanted in there. So what Kathryn and I did is take all of those answers and start trying to break them into some categories. So today we're gonna review those categories really quickly. We're gonna all get up and dot vote on our favorite to try to see what ones are really resonating with us as a group. Then we're gonna break into small groups and really start to discuss some of those in more depth, and then at the very end come back together and share some of those discussion results.
And I did want to comment that we also received three syllabi from some of our colleagues that also will become part of, that are not going to be reflected here. But I wanted to do a shout out and thank the professors for sharing that. So the first topic was critical thinking in the face of relentless change. What does that mean? Are we able to listen, research, distill, and discard, and have an ability to keep up with technology change, not necessarily always doing the next new thing?
And so these are all quotes from all of you that answered the surveys too. So the next topic we called communicating to our audiences. So understanding how to communicate to different audiences, and then how to narrate on the web with the appropriate balance of information and visual aesthetics.
The next was communicating to each other. Do we have persuasive writing and speaking so that we can communicate clearly about the significance and attributes of digital matters with colleagues and to other people who are unfamiliar with digital matters?
Then we have one called sort of on imaging that we said creating, manipulating, and managing digital images. I like the middle quote specifically. This one's basic, an understanding of some of the fundamentals of digital imaging, how resolution works, how to crop an image, JPEG versus TIFF, RGB versus CMYK. Almost everyone in a museum, whether you're directly involved in digital initiatives or not, touches images at some point. And that to me really got to like the idea behind the syllabus, and what we're trying to get at is everyone is involved in some way in a lot of these things.
Another major topic was really what is copyright licensing and what is open source? We really need staff to be able to be comfortable with copyright fundamentals, copyright management, and to be knowledgeable about what open source strategies are and how to maintain open source software.
Databases. Basic database concepts such as consistency and no special characters. What's a relational database? And then a brief training, and then one person said a brief training on database structure can go a long way in helping non-technical users understand new technologies. So trying to use that as a sort of seed to something bigger.
So once you have the data, how do you keep it clean? How do you do analysis? What are metadata standards? So this was a huge topic. It came up in many, many people's information.
Digital fundamentals, or what we called everyday tech. Basic computer skills like Microsoft Office, or shortcuts like Control-C, and then support for using those tools throughout your institutions.
And we also have one that we're calling digital advocacy. For those of us that are in digital or everyone tech, how can we share that knowledge with our staff? So how can we de-technologize and decompartmentalize technology work within GLAMS? That was and so we can really be advocates with our staff.
Outcome and user-focused developments. Transformation happens by changing outcomes, not products. Start with what you want the outcomes to be and try to work backward.
and the all-important project management. There is two aspects. I'm going to come with the bottom one. We don't need to be experts in project management, but we sure need to be able to manage the experts. And how can we be more agile? And with agile, what is the workflow changes?
And the word agile came up a lot. It was a sort of buzzword. People drop it in there. And another one like that I saw that we kind of saw that was sort of dropped in there a lot was UX, and some people also used UI, sometimes interchangeably. That really like, it was a quick way of maybe saying something larger. So UX, UX basic, specialized UX designers, et cetera.
And the all-important web. What is web publishing, HTML, web design? Again, this was a whole host of skills that came under this huge umbrella called web.
And then there were a bunch of topics that either got very few mentions or no mentions at all, which kind of surprised us. But we want to keep them open for discussion here today. SEO and analytics, social, mobile and apps, content knowledge.
Content strategy, community engagement, accessibility, and tools. We are surprised that these only came up with ones or not much at all.
So now the fun part, the dot voting. So we have the slides that we just showed, we printed out and put up on the walls here. We've got some green stickers, and we'd like you to get up and spend a little bit of time looking at those, reading more carefully if you want. But I want you each to vote on up to 4 things. Use 4 dots. I failed to cut them up, so you're gonna have to be honest and only vote 4 times. You can, if you haven't dot voted before though, you can vote for one thing as many times as you want. If there's one thing that you're really into and you really want to highlight it, put all 4 of your stickers on there. All right, so with that, we'll take about 5 or 7 minutes. Oh, the voting criteria. So that's a good question. Thank you, Desi. What we're looking for, what we're hoping to get at is what are really the most critical, most important, like the topics that resonate the most with us as a group. And what the idea, I think, from the beginning was digital literacy at sort of all levels of the institution. So not just what we as museum technologists need to know, but what we want all our whole staffs to have some concept of. Okay? Yes?
Can we propose another topic?
Yeah, you want to write in vote? Sure, why not? I mean, it's a crowdsourced syllabus, so let's go for it, yeah.
Yeah, how about how to use digital media to teach and communicate?
Using digital media to teach and communicate. All right, I'm going to write that up. While you're dot voting, I'm going to make a write-in vote over here, okay? Yeah, and Kathryn's passing out the dots, so grab those.
I don't have quite enough pieces of paper, so if you need some more. And we do have hands up here if you have strong feelings that you're missing something. Help yourself. Everybody had dots. I should put some music on to keep us moving.
Oh, that's a good idea. We could sing. I got some karaoke left in me. It's not good karaoke.
First thing in the morning, you know, so I can keep going. Yes, we could.
I just saw that from across the lake. Oh, that's awesome. Or just pass them off. Okay. want to give a quick overview of what we're seeing here too. This is pretty interesting.
It is very
This is so. I'm actually really interested right away. There's creating, manipulating, and managing digital images. Only got one dot, but like imaging when in the survey was like every other person said something about images, and I guess we're just not interested in discussing that today. Maybe is what the deal is. Like no image stuff. Maybe we don't have enough image representatives here in the room.
Communicating audiences is big. Outcome and user focused development is large. That's the biggest ones over here. Let's see what happened on this side.
Agile and project management are winning the day.
This is a big one.
Great. Oh, and yeah, social got some votes. I'm glad to see accessibility got some votes. No one said the word accessibility in the survey.
Yeah, we were really
which is maybe not
surprised.
because maybe it's not considered a digital literacy. I'm not sure, but it seemed like a topic that was sort of burgeoning. It should be, and it seems like something that's been coming up in our community a lot especially in the last couple of years. And then, I mean, maybe the people who took the survey were jerks. I don't know. Yeah.
Didn't get many votes, but Agile did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Critical thinking got a lot of votes. Web didn't. You're not going to get a lot of people voting for web or social or things like that because they're going to vote more on the higher level topics.
Oh yeah. So the difference is higher level topics. I mean, that's good, Paul. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I would also argue that accessibility is probably an aspect of communicating to our audiences.
Yep.
True.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably
Nice.
a lot of things here that make sense in one way to separate, but in another way they're probably nested.
That's great. That's a good point
Great.
too. So what we're going to try to do is we'd like to break everyone out into some smaller groups, and everyone take one of these things. Let me advance my slide. Everyone sort of each group take a topic and try to answer together these three questions. First, what are the three most important things that you wish your colleagues knew about this topic? How did you learn about this topic? And where would you point people to learn more about this topic? So what we're trying to do is really get to an idea of what the main focus points are, what we really are trying to get at with this broader idea, and then actually start to put some specific resources to them, like you would see in a syllabus. So I don't know how we're going to break you all up. I think it's going to be like whatever you kind of want to talk about. And we're hoping to keep the groups, I think, probably around 8 people, 9, 10.
We have a couple suggestions.
I was just going to say, it would be great if like the groups had some balance of people who actually knew about the topic and people who didn't know about the topic. So that we shouldn't be afraid to go to something if they don't know about
Yes,
the topic.
agreed.
They can ask the question.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, so whether you know, it should be a topic of interest, if you really are an expert in something, you should please go to your topic and help the groups. But I'm gonna pick maybe some of the top ones, spread them around here. I think split up into groups, and we'll just see how things go and take it as it comes and organize as we can. And then once the groups are split out, we're gonna spend the time sort of trying to answer these questions. We'll have markers, and if you can be writing your answers and your ideas on the sheets there on the wall, and we'll get more. We have more sheets, we have markers, we have Post-its. And then we're going to spend some time at the end with each of those groups coming back and just spending a couple minutes each, sharing out some of the conversation and some of the highlights of what came out. And Kathryn and I are going to be kind of walking around talking to you as you go as well. All right? Yes.
Yeah.
Greg, you nailed it. Kathryn and Greg do the best things. Okay, so I'm going to start and say outcome and user-focused development is a big topic, so I'm going to start that back here. I'm going to start just putting up some of the main ones in the back, but you can all overrule me if there's something I don't do. You can do that.
Okay, how about critical thinking in the face of relentless change? I'm going to put that one over here. And again, what this means, you all can help to define and whether you believe this is our most important.
All right, so how about we can start splitting up, I think. Oh, okay, all right.
What's that? Oh, you want to see what we do before you pick?
You don't want me to increase the chaos? No. Are you a professional at this teaching stuff? Professional chaos. All right, let's do community.
I have run 2 faculty meetings that look exactly like this.
I'm sorry, are we making you work this morning? You thought you were going to come and sit back and relax?
All right.
That's the idea of crowdsourcing.
I'm going to set
is
up
have you guys
communicating to
help
our
us with
audiences
this.
over here, And do we have another, let's do one of the big ones from over there too. Which one, Kathryn?
You want to do,
Digital advocacy? Great.
you want digital advocacy, you want this one, digital advocacy? Or data management? Data management, we've got, okay. So Greg, we need a couple more sheets for, need a couple more sheets here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put data management back in the corner over here. Again, I'm not that tall. I used to feel tall. I no longer feel. If you could, so you can write on the use the pens to write on the paper. Just try not to let it bleed through, if you could, please. That's my only. Okay. Everyone find a group they like. So I'm going to do one more, which is on digital advocacy, right over here. All right, there we go. And I'm going to find you a piece of paper to go with it. So everyone has a group, and we're going to get some timing going. Everyone have some paper, markers.
Everyone, we have about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes.
I like pluralizing audiences, but I
There it's on. Now it's on. Right? All right. Okay, everybody, we're going to stop. You've had some great conversations, but I want to make sure we can have some time to share out and share with each other. If you want to kind of either take your seats or turn your seats or whatever, we'd love to go around the room and just give you each a couple minutes to talk about some of the high points or the sort of the crux of what you all got into on each of your topics.
Thank you. So hopefully you've designated your spokesperson.
Or if you haven't,
If you haven't, do it quite quickly.
think
or,
of someone who'll talk.
Or he who holds the pen will become the spokesperson. That's what usually ends up happening.
All right, do we have a group that will volunteer to go first? What? Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, so let me give you a microphone. Because we do want.
Okay. Our group was Digital Advocacy or Everyone Tech. So just to go through the questions, number one, what are the 3 most important things that you wish your colleagues knew about this topic? So I think the first for us was really the understanding that digital permeates across the whole museum, that it isn't just the responsibility of a digital department, or in some cases a person within an institution. And that the cost of this sort of digital naivete, which we struggled with basic literacy about how to spell that, was actually that, can our organizations afford to carry on with this kind of attitude? And just really continuing with the same theme, that, digital is everyone's challenge, and to think about how we can help organizations to understand that, and that this idea of invisible work is expensive. So this sense that somehow we've moved now from, this being, kind of cottage industry over there that a few people do, into really everything that everyone is doing, and so we don't need to worry about it anymore. And it's invisible work, so and so we don't have to invest in training, we don't have to worry about it. And I think we feel all of those things, that is not the case, obviously. And number 2, how did you learn about this topic? So we had some different thoughts on this. I mean, I learned about it just because I was head of digital in a museum, and we got to a stage where, we'd done the projects, the website and the collections online and etc. And then understanding that actually then how do we share this work out? How do we give different departments responsibility for this work? And then realizing that our staff just didn't have the confidence to do that, and the skills. So it wasn't a lack of interest or trying. They literally didn't know how to do things. So that was my experience. Other people just through working on projects, and making assumptions about what people know and don't know. And the just this developing infrastructure. I'm not quite sure whose idea was that?
Came out of a lot of conversations.
Okay.
That relates to the notion that digital is everywhere. It becomes part of an invisible infrastructure that everyone takes for granted.
Absolutely. Okay. And our final one around where would we point people to learn more? There's lots and lots being written about this topic now, and so lots available, people sharing about their own work and their projects. Through peer-to-peer training at all levels, so on-the-job training as we're working with people, we're teaching them about Agile project management, we're teaching them about data, we're teaching them about social, all of those things. Obviously through conferences and blog posts and papers, although what I would say is we are an echo chamber to some degree. I mean, we're talking about this. No one in this room disagrees with anything that any of us are saying. So I think one of our challenges for me in our field, that was why I was so happy to see AAMC represented here, is how do we talk about this with outside of our echo chamber, and how can we support each other with that work, and obviously putting it in performance plans, so there's a sense that actually these are the basic skills that we expect from you within the organization. And then I think this one, which is for me still an ongoing challenge, champions at senior management, because for me all of this is really strategic. You know, at one level it's about skills and it's about delivery, but at another level it's about, you know, what do we need our staff to be able to do to be able to operate in a modern organization, and how do we think about that in terms of recruitment and the skills we want to bring in, and also about our career pathways through the museum. So.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks so much, Carolyn. We have the next group in the back. Thank you. And I didn't tell Carolyn, so I let her go on a little bit extra because I didn't say I was going to cut her off strictly at 3 minutes. So strictly at 3 minutes from everyone else.
No,
you're good.
we have more than 3. So this is data management. We have more than 3 stickies, but they cluster around 3 major ideas: consistency, structure, and standards as the first item, right? So like the value of this kind of structure and consistency in using data. A value of analysis, so who can it apply to, both to clean your own data internally, but also for external reusers and researchers, et cetera. And then understanding the limits of data, so knowing where data kind of can't help you anymore, right? Or where it might not be something you can sell, right? And it's not a product of the institution. The how, so a lot of us talked about like experiential learning through like funder requirements or projects that threw you off the deep end, or incremental mentoring or support. But also there's a lot of discussion of like looking beyond the institution, so libraries, the sciences, at conferences, and then also practice. So using things like visualization to wrap your head around good data before you actually go back and do your own data work. And we noticed a trend in like where to point people, that there's a lot of experiential learning that we wanted people to go do. So hands-on workshops, webinars, go get a graduate certificate, peer-to-peer mentoring. And there's also a lot of like, in hackathons, there's also this idea that there's a lot of forums and listservs right now around data, but not a lot of like definitive, lightweight, human speak places to learn these things. And so there's a real gap for like opportunity or white papers or kind of like training materials that are very lightweight in terms of not speaking to data-y, but introducing people to these concepts and their value.
That's great, thank you so much. That's terrific.
We're tag teaming this one. So we were working on outcome and user-focused development. And the first, what do we want, the 3 most important things we want our colleagues to know. Number 1, the user is not you. The user are not the people inside, the people are outside. We noted there's some similarities and crossovers. That ultimately success actually comes from defining and fulfilling the requirements up front. So saying these are our outcomes, these are the people we want to reach, knowing that helps breed better success. It also ultimately helps everything that you do, whether it's fundraising or actually getting users engaged in your organization, so that's how you actually move forward in sort of the institutional process.
Okay, so number 2, how have you learned about this? And a lot of us learned it through resources online, through practicing. So some of the resources online were the Stanford D-School resources. IDEO has some great things that we think are still free. Getty Leadership Program, Lucy Kimball is a name, who is in design thinking, and project management, and there was one other, logic modeling. So we kind of changed the third question a little bit because we were thinking about how important this is to not just what we do, but with exhibitions and with so much of the work that we engage in. Our third question turned into how do we get leadership on board with this, because that seems to be the challenge, because they kind of look at you when you say human-centered design and they're just have no clue what you're saying. So one idea is getting leadership to try it, so doing kind of a nutshell experience of human-centered design and having them participate. And one idea was to do it at AAM, or when the art directors get together, all those things. So showing the difference in your projects between status quo and visitor-focused projects, so in reports that you give to senior leadership, spelling out how the human-centered design process helped your project. And also using your board, so trying to get someone on your board who knows this and who could maybe gift you some training, and you could get some trainers and diffuse that in your organization.
Great, thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. We were talking about Agile methodology and Agile project management. 3 things we thought were very important. First of all, just definition, right? Making sure that people know what is Agile, why is it important, why is it effective, and that it's not a panacea. It's not for everything in every operational unit. But it can be a management structure as well as a software development tool. Also, we talked a little bit, is Shell still in the room? Yeah. Shell's on our software development team. Shell and I have these debates about capital A Agile versus lowercase a Agile. Because really the Agile manifesto is more about lowercase a Agile. It's like, do what works for you, investigate, pivot, try again, rather than reading a book, right? It's kind of funny that there are books about Agile at some level. Number 2 is very, very important to get training. This isn't just something you can just wake up one day and start doing. Bringing in a professional trainer who really knows the methodology to coach not just your production teams, but leadership, because there is Agile for leadership and methods that they can think about. How do you change that mindset? It's also very important, clearly define all the roles in Agile. If you were in my session at the end of the day yesterday, you heard Jane Alexander from Cleveland say they tried it and it was chaos. And I would argue it's because they never defined the roles. They just threw the word Agile at what they were doing and it turned into chaos. Don't do that, get a trainer. It's a professional discipline. It's not a game, right? It's difficult, it takes practice, you're always working on it. Not chaos, not loss of control. Leadership is still really vital. It's just that leadership isn't making decisions on the sort of details of things. Leadership is really driving inspiration and vision, and the team is making those decisions. So the staff is empowered. It actually reduces risk, which is one of the weird things that people don't fully understand. How do we learn about it, and where would you point people? It's kind of the same thing. So some people mention things. The Brooklyn Museum Tech Blog is a place where a lot of people were exposed to this thinking for the very first time. Because it's coming from a museum, share it with your colleagues. They might trust it more. CogApp, anyone from CogApp in the room? They have a blog where they talk about Agile practices. They talk about failing using Agile practices, really terrific. I added one as the apiumhub.com, which is a really good professional place to look at those. Subscribe to the Harvard Business Review, right? Business is not a naughty word. That resource talks about these kinds of things as management structure time and time and time again. They have a deep, rich archive of writing about Agile dating back into the 1980s. It's worth it. And then come to conferences, right? MCN, MW, and others. And that's what we have.
Great, awesome, thanks. I'll give this group mine. Here you go.
Hi, everyone. We were talking about critical thinking in the face of relentless change. And the top 3 things that we came up with were look outside the field, because a lot of other industries are also dealing with constant change, and they may have insights that we haven't talked about yet. We also have master foundation of basic tools. So if you have a kind of basic mastery, you can apply that as things are moving around you. And we also have change is a constant, and that we need to accept that, which we talked about. That may seem obvious, and when you say it, everyone's like, oh yes, change is a constant. But it's not something that people always incorporate into their everyday thought. We sort of merged how did you learn and where to learn more. I think partly because of the nature of the idea of change, we are all constantly learning about new things and about how change is affecting the industry. But we talked about, we've learned through non-museum conferences and meetups. And again, that goes towards looking outside the field. We've talked about trial and error and just going out and seeing what new tools are there, testing them, breaking them maybe, and then presenting to others on your staff or talking to others on your staff about that. We talked about Twitter in general, Googling new tools that you're not so sure about, just a lot of trial and error. We talked about some specifics: O'Reilly, New Media Consortium, number of blogs, including in the industry, Center for the Future of Museums, outside dev.to, and just generally being able to reach out and seeing what others are doing, and talking to youth to keep up to date with what they're interested in and what tools they're using, because that's often the best way to see what new technologies might be coming down the pike.
And last but not least, one more. Hooray.
Sure.
Okay, so I realized we were so focused on the first question we didn't really get to 2 or 3, but
That's
in
all right.
looking at this, I think I can get there. So top 3 things that we need to remember about communicating to our audiences, or that we wish our colleagues really understood. This is going to sound familiar, but understanding your audiences, that you as staff are not visitors, and don't make key decisions or any decisions assuming that you are. And that there's different learning needs for your visitors, which could be a huge range: cognitive, physical, cultural, technical. Here's where the accessibility piece fits in. You also have to be open to public contribution and engagement, however defined, and that the design thinking mentality can really work on all levels, not just creating a single product, but using design thinking in leadership meetings at the top to keep reminding them that they are not the public, and making them adopt a persona that is outside their comfort level. So the second point is that different platforms need different ways to communicate, or do communicate in different ways. And I think that's probably obvious to this audience. I don't need to go on. But I'll come back when answering the second part of the question. And then communication is an experience, not just information. So question number 2 about how did you learn about this topic, I'll go bottom up. So communication is an experience, not just information. There's something really interesting that I've just been exposed to. I think it's been around for a while. The UK has, in the Arts Council England, UK, has this thing called Generalized Learning Outcomes, GLOs, and they have this beautiful star diagram where it talks about not just going to cultural events or institutions for, let's say, knowledge and understanding, but it could be enjoyment, it could be a change in behavior, it could be social, it could have all of these different outcomes, hard to measure, but still being aware that there are all these different outcomes. And there are other things like that in different fields besides the arts and humanities. In terms of the different platforms needs, there were 2 examples, or one example that I thought was really interesting about the 3-tiered vocabulary that comes out of science and education training. So that the first tier is the specialized, go ahead, so you talk about it, Castle.
First tier is everyday terms. Tier 2 is terms that goes back and forth, and so depending on what context it has different meanings. And then tier 3 are specialized terms within Advocacy.
Great. And then in terms of understanding audiences, one of my team members, do you want to talk about how you first learned about understanding audiences? Desi, are you still here?
I'm right here.
Yeah, how did you learn about understanding audiences?
So, how did I learn, like, what are some?
Yeah, like what did you do to like make you understand that, oh, we really need to?
Yeah, I've done a lot of design thinking stuff. So a lot of the groups mentioned over there, Idea Best have these really great resources. That's one way. It's not the only way. In the field of museum education, we do a lot of evaluation and audience research. John Paul is very
Great.
Okay, Max. Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you so much to that group. Clap, clap.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you all so much. I think 2 slides, maybe one more. Thank you all so much for participating both in this survey beforehand and in this discussion. A lot of rich material has come out. There were a lot of overlaps I think we all saw between even different topics on what was important and how to tackle those topics. Kathryn and I are going to work on kind of compiling all this down and documenting it all, getting it posted either to the doc or then maybe to somewhere new down the road. We'd love to continue the discussion. So if you haven't already, if you did the survey and gave us your email that way, great. If you haven't given us your email and you'd like to kind of keep in touch with the project, please either give us the email or get one of our cards to stay in touch. And then down the road, we're going to end now, but we'd love to hear like what you would like to see happen with this as well. It really is, we really did want to do this as a community effort, and we'd like to see it continue that way as well. Oh, and we have a question?
Yeah, well, I
Or a
wanted to
comment?
respond to that. One of the things that came up in ours was As someone who's not in the profession, it's been really hard to have a reference point to say, like, these are things that the professional community thinks other people need.
Right.
Here's why and how in simple language.
Great, great, yeah, great idea. Yes.
Just from the point of view that I am a teacher, right? And syllabi, sorry. From the point of view that I am a teacher, and you create a syllabi for 1 year, and you do that, and then you adjust it for the next year, and you adjust it for the next year, and you adjust it for the next year. I don't see that these things are going to be static.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's a living document. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'd like to see this develop over time.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe keep track of like what happened of those changes over
Yeah.
time too. It kind of I started with an idea. One thing, I was looking at the original MCN, the 68 conference, and like the list of topics there, and that kind of like got me thinking, like, what are our topics today?
Right.
So that's great. Yeah, it's a living document. All right, we're gonna have to close. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
again,
Thank
and
you all.
enjoy the rest of your day.